What up, what up? Winbush here, and happy holidays to you guys. For this special, I want to show you guys how to make a Christmas ornament from scratch. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, so let's get started. Let's make a star. So we're going to come up to our pen spline, come down here, let's make a star. So now we have an 8-point star, and you can make it as many points as you want. I'm gonna stick with 8. And so let's mess around with the inner radius a little bit. Let's bring this down. Let's see, it's 60. Yeah, somewhere around there. I think looks pretty good. Okay, so next let's extrude this out. So I'm gonna come up here to my extrude tab, and I'm using R21 by the way. So I want to put my star under my extrude here on my right hand side. And now we have an extruded star. So let me click on my extrude, look at my attributes window, and I'm gonna go over to caps. Now for my size, I'm just gonna bring this all the way up to, I guess we could do 100. I'm gonna leave my bevel at round, and then let me see what this looks like from the side. So I'm gonna come back up here where it says object, bring this down to like 2. Go back to my caps, and then for my depth, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. So my shape depth here, let's bring this down until it starts looking like a star, like an ornament star. Somewhere around 10%, I think looks decent. And any ornament star, it's not even all the way around. Like these, I guess, secondary points are usually pushed in a little bit. So we can easily do that by, let's go back up to my extrude, hit the check mark, and now I'm going to click on my spline. Now if I hit C on my keyboard, this is going to make an editable spline. And then if I come over here on my left hand side and click the points, now I can select the points. So I want to make sure I have my arrow selected here, have my point selected here, and let's select like every other point like that. And then I'm going to come up here to my scale tool, click on that, and I'm just going to click somewhere off into the distance with my left click and just drag down until I'm happy with the results. So somewhere, I say about there, looks pretty decent. So let me click back on my model tool here, click back on my arrow. I'm gonna turn my extrude back on, and there we go. I mean, now it's quick and easy. Now we have an ornament star. So let's add like the string part to it and like the little hoop, which is easy. So we just come up here to our torus. Let's make a really small torus. Bring this up and do to my orientation. Let's do +Z. Then just mess around with the radius until you find something that you're happy with. Somewhere around there. There we go. So that's going to be my hoop. I'll probably even make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. So that's going to be the hoop at the top of the ornament. And then for the string, I'm just going to use something simple like a cylinder. So let's make this, we can even make this super long. Say 1500. And then for my radius, probably bring this down to like 2. And then just drag this all the way up on the y-axis till we're at the top of our little hoop here. Cool, somewhere around there should be good. I can even make my radius probably even 1. So there we go. Now we have our ornament, and our next step now is to let's texture with Redshift. I like using Redshift, and since I'm using R21 and version 3, let's use the new node system. Even though it's a simple texture, I mean, we'll just show you how to use the new node system. So if I come up here to my node space, make sure I click on Redshift. And then I'm going to come over here to my render settings. Under render, let's pick Redshift. I'm going to turn off the force IPR. I'm going to leave everything as is for right now, because we're just going to start working on our textures. So if you want to use the new node editor, I did a tutorial on it, but just real quick, down here in my left-hand corner, click create. And then we don't want to use a Redshift material. What we want to do is come up to materials and then use new node material. So I'm going to click on that. Now you see that we have a node material in here. And if I double click on it, this brings up the new node editor. And like I said, I'm going to use a pretty simple texture. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. I just like the way that the new node editor looks. But I'm going to click right here where it says material 1. And I'm just going to use the gold preset. So if I come over here to gold, it gives us all of our attributes already set up for gold. And then down here, I'm just going to rename this one node gold. And then I'm going to hold down the control key. Let me drag this up so you can see it. So down here in my materials window, I'm going to hold down the control key, left click, drag open, or drag over, sorry, to make a copy. And I'm going to name this one silver. And then I'm just going to do the same thing, preset, silver. And there we go. It's as simple as that. We're not going to do anything too crazy because I want to make this look a little bit cartoonish in After Effects. So I'm just going to drag my gold over here onto my extrude. And then my silver onto my torus and my cylinder. And then what we want to do is now just add like a simple light. I'm going to use an HDR. So I'm going to use a dome light. And let me find an HDR that I have here. Let me see, Adobe Bridge. Okay, so I have this HDR set. It's from Rhinoceros. I think he might have like made this free on one of the forums. It was maybe the Redshift forum. I can't remember. I've had it for a few years, but if you just Google Rhinoceros HDRs, you could probably find this pack. I know he gave it away free some odd years ago. But the one that I want to use for this one is the Studio 11. I like the way that this lighting is right here. So I'm just going to take this HDR and drag it over into my path. Then I'm going to right here under environment where it says enable background. I'm going to click that off. And then for alpha channel replace, I'm going to click that on to make sure that we have our alpha channel when we render this out. And then I'm going to click on coordinates because I'm going to move it around a little bit. But let me come up to my render view and let's click play just to see what our render is looking like. So, I mean, our render looks pretty decent. Let me, let's see. Let's move around our rotation a little bit. See if we could get, there we go. So we're starting to get some cool contrast in there. So I think somewhere around there is where I want to be. Yeah, something like that looks pretty cool. We're getting some cool contrast, dark areas here on the right. We're getting some glints right here. I mean, that looks pretty cool. So let me stick with that. And then let me bring in the camera. So I'm going to come up to my standard camera. And then my attributes under coordinates. I'm going to zero everything out. So my position and my rotation, everything is exact 0. And then I'm going to enable it so that we're right in the middle here. And I'm going to click H on my keyboard. And that brings us all the way out. And everything should be lined up. There we go. Let me hit 8 there. I like using even numbers. So I can even probably go a little bit higher here. And speaking of which, like I want to make a really large file for when I bring it into After Effects. So let me come back up here to my render settings. I'm going to make this, my width is going to be 1920. Then my height is going to be like by 3000. And that way, when I bring it into After Effects, I have leeway as to how I could just like move it around. I have a pretty large file that I could work with. Let me get this relined up. So let's move back. Let me hit H again. Yeah, see, there we go. Something like that. All right, cool. So I have my position, everything set up. I have my textures and everything set up. Let me go to my extrude. I'm just going to rotate my star just a tad bit. So let's say somewhere around there, just to give it a little bit of dimension. We might get some cool lighting off of that as well. Let me check here. Yeah, so something like that's cool. We just shifted it over to the right a little bit. And then from here, I'm going to actually, let me go to my Redshift AOVs, because I'm going to add a reflective pass. So if I come down here to reflections, drag that in here, and then let me go back to my render window, come down to reflections, and we can see what kind of reflections we're going to get. So yeah, I mean, that's a cool reflections pass. We could work with that in After Effects. Okay, so now we're ready to render everything out. So the settings that I'm going to be using for my max samples, I'm just going to go overkill, bring it up to 256. For my reflections, I'm just going to do like 128. So I'll come down to sampling overrides. Just going to override reflections, do like 128. Then for my GI, I'm going to do brute force. For my secondary GI, do point cloud. And again, I mean, this is just going to be for a still. So, I mean, we could go all out. Should render pretty fast anyway. And then for my format, I like using the OpenEXR at 32-bit. Make sure you click on the alpha channel. And then for my multipass, I'm just going to use a PNG. Let me see. I only want one frame here. So my output, I'm just going to do current frame. And everything looks pretty good here. So I'm just going to render this out, and then we're going to get into After Effects and composite everything together. Okay, so now I have After Effects open. What I'm going to do is I have my star here, my diffuse, and then I have my reflection. So I'm just going to click on my main EXR file here, click down into the composition tab here, make a new composition like so, and I'm going to just drag this up. So this is the star that we had made out of Cinema 4D. So I'm going to come over here on my right hand side under effects and presets, type in levels. This just bring the left tab here down a little bit, add a little bit more contrast to it. Something like that, I think looks pretty good. So now let me bring my reflection layer over top of that. I'm also going to add levels to this as well. I'm just going to bump up my levels a little bit. Don't want it too blown out, but oops. So you bring this down a tad bit just till it looks good to your eye. Somewhere around there I think is good for the reflection. So down here in my timeline under mode, I'm going to click on normal, and then I'm going to click on screen, and that brings a reflection over top of our object here. But as you can see, it doesn't bring a transparency layer in with it. And so a quick fix for that is I'm going to hit Control D on my star layer here, and that's going to duplicate it. Then I can actually delete the levels off of this one, because I'm going to use this strictly as an alpha channel. So I'm going to bring this up to the top of it, and then down here where it says star reflection, I'm going to come over to my track matte, hit none, and then alpha matte. And now we're using the alpha channel from this layer on our reflection matte here. So now if I turn this on and off, you can see how it's affecting it. All right, cool. So now what I want to do is let's make our main composition that we're going to put this into. So I'm going to get on here, make a new composition. There you go, 1920 by 1080. That should be fine. I'm going to just name this one Final Comp, like so. And then down here in my timeline, I'm going to right click, go to new, and just make a new solid. Let's make this one black. Click OK. Then under my effects and presets over here on my right hand side, I'm going to click ramp. And I'm just going to drag a gradient ramp into here. And let's bring the start ramp down to 540. That's the center point for a HD comp here. And then over in ramp shape, let's do radial. And then my start color, I'm going to do maybe like a lighter red, maybe mid light red. And then for my end color, I'm just going to do a dark red. To kind of give focus to our center point here, because this is where I'm going to bring my star composition into. So if I drag this up, we have our star here. I can make this a little bit larger. Let's say 150. Something like that. And I'm just going to have it in the center of my screen here. There we go. So now what I want to do is I'm going to use a Boris effect. Like I'm going to use cartoon, And I know that we have cartoon that comes inside of After Effects, but I like the Boris effect cartoon because if I go here under S cartoon, under Sapphire Stylized, we have a whole bunch of presets that we could use. So I'm going to come to load preset, and we have a whole bunch of cool presets from different authors. Like this one is made by GenFX. I know we have some by John Dickinson here. We have Angie Taylor's here as well. The one I want to use is the John Dickinson one. This is French Poster. So I'm going to load this one in. And that's giving us a cool cell shaded type look. But over here where it says edge width, I'm going to bring this down to like 1. There we go. So we sharpen it out a little bit, and you can see that we lost our transparency here. That's okay, because if we come down to opacity and do as pre-mult, now we have our transparency back here on our star. And we can do a little bit more to like emphasize the background here and highlight around the star. So I'm going to, let me bring down another solid. Actually, let me make a new solid. So I'm going to right click down here, click new, go to solid. And I'm going to click a brighter red one, something like this. And then I'm going to right click on my new solid, go to mask, make a mask. And if I click on my red solid and hit M on my keyboard, let me drag this up, you see that it's a shortcut to bring up the mask properties. So over here, I want to go click on shape, and I'm going to make this ellipse. There we go. So reset the ellipse, click OK. Then I'm just going to double click on one of the points here, and I'm going to hold down the control key until I have a circle. And then I'm going to hold down Control Shift Alt and drag in the corner just to bring it down a little bit more towards the center, somewhere around there. And then on my mask, I'm going to feather this out, something like that. Let's bring this underneath our star. And then under my mode here, let's see what add does to it. So there we go. Yeah, add emphasizes it a little bit. I could probably make this a little bit larger here. Now I could bring down my transparency a little bit. So something like that, I think looks pretty cool. Maybe let's feather it out a tad bit more. Just to kind of blend it in. So somewhere around there looks pretty cool. Okay, so I'm liking the way that my star is looking here. I want to make it look a little bit more cartoony. So let me go to my tritones. And I'm actually going to like make this a little bit oranger. So when you bring in tritones, it's automatically going to go to like this brownish, dull, grayish color. I'm going to start with my midtones here. Let's make it a little bit oranger. Somewhere around there. And then for my highlights, let's make this like a bright orange. Somewhere around there. Let me actually gonna work on my midtones a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more yellowish. Actually, I think I have this reversed. So let me make my highlights yellow, because I was liking the way that was looking. Yeah, somewhere around there, I think looks pretty cool. So my highlights, I'm going to make yellow. Midtones around orange. And then my shadows, I'm going to keep black. Then let's drag this down to blend with the original. So we bring our original textures in there a little bit. Somewhere like that. And then we can emphasize it more by adding levels to it. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty cool there. So I'm getting that, like that cell shaded cartoon look that I wanted to get. So I think something like that looks pretty cool. So to finish it off, we can actually add some snow here. So let me right click, add adjustment layer. Let me go to my effects and presets and type in snow. We actually have a Boris effect snow right here. Something like that. Well, let's see what presets that we have. So if I come over to current, let's see what Fairyland looks like. Yes, I like those stars a little bit better. Let me drag down my amount. So that's way too many. I think something like that might work. Let's see what happens if I add like a glow to it maybe. Bring my intensity down to like 0.1. Didn't do too much. I could probably delete the glow. And let's move this below the star. I don't need it to be over top of it. And then I think something like that's going to work. And so, you know, if you want that cartoony effect, I highly recommend the Boris cartoon shader, like how I was doing there. Kind of get you in the vicinity of where you want to be at. Also add tritones to it to kind of pick the colors that you want for your highlights and midtones. And I think that's about it. And so, yeah, this is how I made my Christmas ornament using Cinema 4D, using the extrude in there, using Redshift, bring it all together in After Effects using some of the Boris plugins. And yeah, that's about it. So hopefully this did help you guys out. You know, we're just having a little fun around here for the holidays. And since I'm in the Christmas spirit, you know what? I'll make my project files absolutely free. I'll leave a link down in the comments down below. So if this did help you out, as always, leave me a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Once again, happy holidays to you guys out there. No matter what you celebrate around the world, make sure you're safe. And until next time, keep creating. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.